Welcome back to another video on Gearsaw Studios, and today I'm going to be showing you how to build yourself an ice boat racing track. That way you have a nice place in order to race around with boats, since if you've never tried it, boats can go upwards of 50 blocks per second on ice, which means it's time to make an amusement area explicitly for that. So without further ado, let's investigate how we'd go about this. And also, this is part of the 12 Days of Gearsaw series, which means 2 days after this, another upload. For our palette, we're going to be using ice. I recommend packed ice rather than ice or blue ice, since blue ice is very expensive, and normal ice is, well, transparent and also slightly harder to get surprisingly. Everything else will be done with gray and red concrete. Eventually, we will need some redstone components, so at bare minimum, you will need yourself some sticky pistons, slime blocks, and redstone dust. Of course, you might also need some obsidian for this too, or another non-stick block like glazed terracotta. Then get yourself a very large flat area, and, well, you can use a river for this. I don't recommend it, but technically you can. And then you want to make a massive piece of ice, and this should be around 23 thick or something like that. It doesn't need any specific dimensions. I'm going to be using a very simple shape for this. So essentially, get yourself a large area filled completely with packed ice. Over here, we have a very large piece of ice, and once you get all this down, congratulations, you're already very close to finishing, unless you want to add extra redstone components. Essentially, what we want to do is go around the edges with red concrete like this. And of course, this is a lot of resources due to the size. And of course, you can use more unique shapes and curves and stuff, but of course, I'm trying to keep this simple. Put this in red concrete, then put gray concrete on the tops and bottoms. Replace any ground it's over like this, and then make sure that if there's a large area under it, then light it up. That way, you don't have any spider noises. Once you do this all the way around, make sure you're not over any areas. If you're floating, then I'd recommend either terraforming the area to hide the fact that it's floating, or putting a filler block under it, since it's not terribly important for that part unless you are over the ocean. And then, once you completely encircle it, you have a nice area where you can freely boat around. Of course, this isn't a racing track yet, but it's a start, and you can see how hard it can be to do some boating in this area. But still, I'd recommend trying it a couple of times and seeing if the size is right, since if it's too small, good luck drifting across this. With our very basic icy rectangle, we now technically have an ice boat racing track. Of course, in order to turn it into a functional one, you need to divide it down the middle, or have it loop around something or somewhere in order to make it consistent. So, of course, rectangles aren't necessary. You can make it go all sorts of directions, thick and thin, up and down, although those parts might be a little tough. But we have a very simple design that can be expanded upon quite easily. And expanding upon it is, well, simple. From here, we have 3 different mechanisms that can allow you to make more interesting courses outside of using only shape. The first one are little barriers like this. Of course, this is the starting line, marked by the blue ice, and this prevents people from cheating, because of course, human error will cause people to place them slightly incorrectly. Whoever places it closest to the starting line might win. So, activate this, and now everyone can press their boats safely against this, so that way everyone has the same angle and, no unfair advantages. This is quite easy to accomplish using an on and off switch like this. Make sure you have redstone repeaters if your target blocks are a bit further away. And then from here, you go onto another strength inverter, well, signal inverter. This is unnecessary right here, but I still prefer it. And then this causes these to remain powered. If someone throws a snowball, then it will depower, and now the race starts. Not to mention, it's stress-proof. No matter how many times someone presses it, it's not going to break. To show you, I'm going to throw a lot of snowballs. As you can see, no breakage. Then you can place these all around the course in order to add some difficulty in case someone activates one. Of course, projectiles don't inherit player velocity that well, so, very hard to land your shots, but, races are races. From here, you can have two things to change your height. Of course, going down is simple. Make sure it's not some very specific integers that cause your boat to break. You can either use bubble elevators like this. This one is a very short one, so of course it won't be working too well. But if you make yours taller and longer, then it will give a nice fair advantage. But be careful about making it too long, since it might stall people out. And then we have our less consistent option, but with a higher reward, the slime block launcher. The problem with this one is the fact that, well, sometimes it just doesn't launch you, or it breaks your boat. For reference, here's what it might do. And going across this, you can see, didn't fling me correctly. If you go too slow, then it will work correctly. But if you go too fast, it really won't. So, of course, it might even straight up break your boat into its pieces, which will give you 3 planks, 2 sticks, and that is not very nice. So of course, only use that if you're desperate, or you know a little bit more about how to use slime blocks correctly, since otherwise you might have a broken circuit. To build this, you need an unmovable block. Glazed terracotta is the cheapest one, and then redstone dust like this, sticky piston, slime block. And although inconsistent, if used correctly, it could end up being a nice little thing. You could even incorporate it like item boxes from Mario Kart, where you can try it, you might get flung into the air and able to take a shortcut, or it breaks your boat and now you instantly get disqualified. It's up to you. And of course, the ideas are limitless. You could either give people multiple boats to make up for that, or you could even further up the competition by giving everyone bows to break each other's boats, or, legs. Either one works, and it slows people down. So it's up to you what you want to do with this course. From here, you might want to add more decorations, or even little roadblocks in order to make people steer in a certain way. In order to make this slightly more interesting outside of simple redstone, we can incorporate a couple of designs into the track and utilize blue ice. First off, the blue ice. Of course, it's very expensive, considering 1 blue ice is equivalent to 81 normal ice or 9 packed ice. You can get a little bit of it from the bottoms of icebergs, so if you're willing to make the trek down here, who knows, you might get enough to do this. But you can see, it might be a little difficult. Luckily, it contrasts enough, that way you can see it from a decently far distance, like here, next to the magma. Yeah, I live 1.18, but anyways, we have some blue ice here, and when you go over it, you go ever so slightly faster. So, going back into creative, you'll notice that I'm accelerating a little bit quicker. Although, it's not super noticeable, still, it could make a small difference in the race. Of course, you can use some of these inconsistent machines here in order to jump over walls. Incorporating those into the track with red concrete underneath is an interesting way to spice it up, along with adding some designs. Of course, the only things that will necessarily work here is more ice and blue ice. So let's use normal ice. Add some black concrete under it, or even build this over something, and then now it looks like it's been used a lot. Of course, simple designs, whether you want it to be complicated or a bunch of lines, either one works. And then the final thing you can do, if you have the area to do so, since this is pretty close to the ocean, I'm not going to add it, you can potentially add advertisements. Of course, depending on how tall you make them, you might not have enough room to do anything complicated, but still, some random multicolored pieces will do wonders in order to make this feel like a real coliseum or a racing track. If you're looking for something more for a simple playing around like this, then they aren't necessary. But still, it's an interesting idea to add. Once you have all that, cover up your redstone, and then this build will be complete, making it a fantastic addition if you want some mini games in your world, considering it gives you a reason to go to the snow biome for all the ice or a snow-capped mountain. and then you can place all this down and have some racing fun. And with that, it's the end of today's video. If you enjoyed this video, remember, please like and subscribe, it really helps me out. And if you're watching this the day it's uploaded, stay tuned, 2 days later, I'll be uploading again. So enjoy the rest of your day. Gearsaw out.